Hello.
Hi.
Hi. So today we're going to be seaming our coin purses. So there are a bunch of ways to seam things, and they all have fancy names like invisible seam for stockinette stitch and overcast seam, and there's a million different ways to do it. Today we're going to do an overcast seam. It's the seam that I like with garter stitch, and plus it's not the tidiest seam. It doesn't make your seam totally invisible, but because we're felting this, it doesn't matter how visible your seam is because it will go away in the wash, and also it's the easiest for new people to do. So here is our finished work. I folded it in half lengthwise, and all I'm going to do is seam along here, and I'm going to seam along here, and then we're going to be ready to felt. So I'm going to use a contrasting color yarn so you can really see the seam, but of course you're going to be using your red yarn, like bits of your red yarn. Okay, so I'm threading my tapestry or yarn needle, okay, and then I'm going to start at this end, and I'm going to match, I'm going to find the first stitch here and the first stitch here, and I'm going to put my needle through both of those first stitches to start. Okay, and then I'm going to pull it through like that. So I'm going to be joining these two edges. And I'm going to leave a 6-inch or so tail, and we'll weave that in at the end, so it'll make it disappear. So now, basically, all you do is do your best to match stitch for stitch on each edge. With garter stitch, that's really hard because they're not very even or uniform. And again, I'm telling you, don't worry about it. Don't sweat it. We're just piecing this thing together the best we can. It doesn't have to be perfect. The further you get into knitting, the more you'll be kind of anal about finishing. But today, you don't have to worry about that. We just want to get this to a point where we can felt it. Okay, so I just started with one overcast stitch, and I'm going to, just to get myself started, but now follow along with me. So I'm going to take my needle and put it on this side, okay, and then I'm going to put it through in the same direction on this side. And I'm, again, trying to match stitch for stitch, but I'm not going to be too worried about that. And you'll see when I pull that yarn through, it's going to make a stitch that goes over the seam, and that's why it's called an overcast stitch. So I'm going to do it again. So this stitch and this stitch, they look like good little partners. Needle enters away from me in this stitch and also away from me in this stitch. And then I'm going to pull it through, and then you see that I have now 3 little overcast stitches. And I'm just going to continue that way. This looks like a good match to this one, you know, around there. I don't know, I'm guessing. Finding edge stitches that look like they match up pretty well. And see how it's not very tidy? I don't care. Not right now. Later I'll care. I don't want all the knitters in the world to be mad at me because seaming is really a particular thing. But for right now, we want you to love knitting, and if you get hung up in what beautiful seaming is, it's just too frustrating. So right now we're just trying to join these two edges. That's all we're doing with this overcast
And if it's in the
stitch.
same color, it also, once it's felted,
it will
go
totally
away.
disappear.
Okay.
You won't be able to see it at all. That's why I'm saying I'm not that worried about it. So then here's another one, and see how I'm trying to pick stitches that are, you know, side by side, but, you know, I'm doing the best I can. So that's it.
Adjacent.
And then you'll see it does not look that good, and we don't care. Okay? That's how it's going to be.
Okay, so you're going to do the whole seam.
I'm going to do the whole seam on the side, and then
flip it over.
Well, no, then I'm going to weave in this end. Okay, I'm going to weave it in, and then I'll have an end on this side, and I'm going to weave that in as well. Just as we did when we were finished with knitting. And then I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Simple overcast stitch all the way to the end. And then we're ready to felt.